My name is Sam Jenks, and welcome to another episode of The Way We Source, a podcast hosted by Kodiak Hub, where we share our talks with procurement practitioners, leaders, experts, consultants, content gurus, and people that we find downright inspiring, diving into the role that sourcing and procurement plays in the way that we live. If you like today's episode, make sure to give the program a like and a follow. Today, I think that you're going to like this episode. We have the pleasure of hosting a dynamic and experienced business leader, someone who boasts over 15 years within procurement and supply chain at businesses such as NG Bailey, NG, and Kier Group, currently visiting professor at Nottingham Business School, affiliate professor at Emelon Business School, hosts 44,000 followers on LinkedIn, and currently the chief procurement officer at Equans, UK and Ireland, Dr. Jonathan Sims. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Sam.
What a CV, I have to say, to start with. How do you have the time?
No, it's a good question, and it kind of catches up on you when you look back at the last 15 years. And obviously, it's been quite incremental. It didn't all happen in one go, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
I'd love to understand what made you decide to work in procurement in the first place, Jonathan.
Yeah, so my route, I'm not I suppose a procurement guy through and through. I've had quite a varied career. So initially, I started out as a chartered surveyor. So obviously worked in the commercial setting for probably 10 years as a development surveyor. And then I moved from that into a work-winning role, doing some human resources activities along the way. And then I fell into a strategic projects role. And one of those projects was to go and undertake a review of procurement. And then the rest is history. Just found it a really interesting space to make obviously a fiscal impact on an organisation. And also, along with that came a lot of people responsibility, and which I also enjoyed.
Yeah, I would love to maybe stop there for a second. And you mentioned some interesting things. What exactly does procurement and sourcing mean to you? You mentioned that you get to both mix the fiscal aspects of impact upon both the bottom and the top line of the business, but also the people aspect. I'm curious, what exactly does the role mean to you?
So I think at the highest level, when I think about procurement in the context of, the current organisation of Equans, it really is about helping the organisation deliver its vision, mission, ambition, securing profitability, driving growth. But there's so many facets to that. A significant part of the role is developing people and attracting the right people to the organisation that can make a difference. It's about business partnering. At multiple kind of levels within the organisation, supporting various different stakeholders, and also trying to manage risk and bring some market foresight to the organisation as well, particularly in the context of the current market.
Making an impact is exactly what we believe at Kodiak Hub that procurement and sourcing has a massive opportunity to do. And if anyone takes a moment, they can see on your LinkedIn profile that ESG and sustainable procurement are two prominent themes. Something that is showing procurement has the opportunity to make a significant impact in corporate sustainability within businesses globally. What role do you believe that procurement and sourcing, as well as supply chain, plays in the business sustainability strategy abroad?
I mean, I think it's huge and significant. I mean, in terms of Equans at a global level, we have 130,000 vendors. At a UK level, it's probably in excess of 10,000 vendors. The vast majority of what we do, we're entirely dependent upon our subcontract supply chain. So we have a huge responsibility to take stock of that and try and understand how we can support our ambitions for 2030 and beyond, to really start to understand that embedded carbon in those activities and understand how we can mitigate it. What are the new innovative solutions where we're going to be able to decarbonise our activities? And there's a huge responsibility, and that's reinforced by our clients. And that's not just in terms of carbon, but as having a more diverse supply chain, and just being generally more representative of the communities that we serve.
That's a massive undertaking. I mean, not really a small order. How exactly has Equans worked towards these particular initiatives? Is there any type of concrete tips you could share with any other practitioners that are out there listening in to today's episode?
Yeah, so one of the things we started probably about 5 or 6 months ago is we partnered with a really innovative organisation. They've recently been acquired actually by a major company, and they're working with us to help to unpick and map out our Scope 3 carbon. So effectively, it's a carbon accounting platform. So at a PO level, we can start to understand what are we spending with various different suppliers and what is the likely carbon associated with those activities. Give us that broad heat map, and then I suppose as a transversal team within Equans, we can start to get our arms around that in terms of, look, what are the small incremental steps we can take, leading to obviously the bigger gains to start to mitigate this. But first, you've got to kind of measure, and then you've got to act and understand, I suppose.
You can't manage what you can't measure, as the old saying goes, right? I want to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to get back to the practice of procurement. But you, as a visiting and affiliate professor, get to access really the pulse of the next wave of these business professionals that are coming into the profession of procurement and sourcing. I'm curious, with that, you also get closer to the theory, right? What is the importance of procurement theory aligning with today's practice? And also, is there an alignment between the two?
Yeah, I mean, more so than ever, and particularly in the global DBA program that I'm involved in between Emlyon and Durham. The link between academia, practitioners, and even policymakers, I think, is closer now than it's ever been, or certainly it's been in the 10, 15 years that I've been involved with it. I mean, I get a huge amount out of it personally, because being close to theory, it helps keep you relevant, and it helps refresh your thinking around certain things, because you do start to beat to a certain resonance if you aren't keeping your ear to the ground in terms of theory. And we do bring academics into our organisation to help us think about certain situations and problems differently. So I think that the link for me is really close and really powerful. And equally, moving that the other way, a significant role of mine with Nottingham Business School is feeding back into the business school the thoughts and feelings of industry in terms of, look, the types of graduates we actually want to see coming out of business schools. What are the blind spots we see when we get graduates landing on day one from a good business school wanting to start a career in procurement?
And we're definitely going to touch upon that, as talent is so important to building world class procurement teams, which I know is something that's a passion of yours. You mentioned there that you guys have brought in academics into the business to be able to address real practical challenges or maybe opportunities that you saw could be able to develop. Could you maybe give an example of one of those for any listeners out there that are looking to get inspired by an opportunity to do the same?
Yeah, so a really interesting, in terms of the Equans strategy, we kind of pursue at the minute what we see a triple chance, which is effectively for us to be at the forefront of the industrial, energy and digital transition. So in terms of the digital transition, there's a really interesting piece of work that was brought to us by Durham Business School in terms of the metaverse and Web 3.0 and what that might mean for industry. What challenges would it present? What are the opportunities? What are the issues with the north-south divide in terms of that within the UK? And that's now developed into an all-party parliamentary group where we're working in the House of Lords as Equans with policymakers and with Durham University. We're bringing youth groups into that from across the UK as well, so from a secondary school level. And I think that's a really great example of how that platform is driving knowledge for all parties to that, and also we're kind of co-creating policy in that space, because that's ultimately going to lead to a white paper on that particular subject matter.
Very inspiring. What if you were going to point any, because you've now said that, alignment is important between theory and practice, right? Both in understanding for the business what the theory is that's being taught in universities, but also vice versa. So talent's coming out of university with the correct kind of attributes in place to be able to make an impact. Do you see any discrepancies between curriculum and practice that maybe you would like to address, or that you've spotted throughout the years?
Yeah, so from the engagements I've had with universities, I think one of the immediate observations, even if you're running project work with students or consultancy projects, in a university environment, that can be quite different from the challenges encountered within organisations and the speed within which decision making has to take place. And sometimes we have to make decisions, sometimes with imperfect information. And I know that can be quite frustrating for some of my academic colleagues.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, obviously, in an academic context, you're not having the same pressures of the external world as you do in the practice, right? How exactly do you believe maybe that procurement professionals, rather than the other way around, right, that the curriculum can get closer to the practice? How do you believe that procurement professionals can ensure that they continue to learn and stay relevant? As an educator yourself, do you have any practical tips for procurement pros out there that are trying to stay relevant, stay at the pulse of things?
Yeah, I think there's so much out there now, and anybody within my team, I'm a real probably sometimes too pushy in terms of continual professional development and lifelong learning. But not everything has to be about an MBA or a PhD or a master's level qualification. I'm a strong advocate of SIPs. I'm a fellow of SIPs, and there's a huge body of information there, and almost a university within itself of information. There's other great platforms as well. We're a partner of the Sustainability School in the UK, and equally they provide a huge amount of information on the cutting edge practices in terms of sustainability within procurement. But I think it's just incumbent on procurement professionals to try and find the time in this increasingly busy working life to just prioritise your own learning and your own development, because, as you say, there's a big relevance piece there, and it's important to stay relevant.
Yeah, well, and when you have, like you said, right, if you have 100% on, and then it's hard to live by the 80/20 rule. At the same time, you have to always take that into account as a practitioner in a way that maybe you have more time as an academic. So I understand.
Yeah, and possibly there's a big role. There's an element of maturity and investment within organisations as well, because quite a lot of the professional development that our procurement folk are undertaking is via the apprentice route or the apprentice levy, and the apprentice levy is even covering sort of MBA level studies. But there's a 20% time allowance associated with that, and to allow people to take that amount of time out of the working week to go and focus on that professional development. The organisation's got to be quite mature to allow and support that.
Segues perfectly into a topic that I'd love to talk to you about, because the organization, the responsibility that they have to be able to harness a team's capabilities and also develop those capabilities moving forward to the framework for building a best class team. That's something that I know that you're passionate about, and I would love to discuss a little bit more. Talent and new waves of talent are so incredibly important for the future of procurement, as we've talked about now just quite a bit in the previous section. What exactly do you see are some of the biggest challenges to attract new talent as a procurement leader and as an organization?
Yeah, and I think there's various different aspects to it. I mean, from as simple as from an all round, let's be honest, from a remuneration and package and incentivization perspective, I've seen a huge amount of movement in that over the last 2 or 3 years.
Could you provide some examples?
Just in terms of the salary expectations and benchmarking that we're finding at all levels of roles within procurement has increased significantly in the last 2 to 3 years. Now, that isn't, I would say, the only factor that's driving attraction, but it's a fairly important one. It's a fairly major driver for most people.
And additional incentivization, because I think that it's an interesting topic, as a sales leader, as a marketing leader, right? Incentivization is something that it's second nature in any of those roles. Is there similarities to procurement that practitioners or teams can be able to implement more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this is the whole benefits package. Sorry, whether this is about the bonus element, whether it's about car allowance, whether it's about the additional fringe benefits of maternity and paternity leave, the entire sort of flexible working, all of that kind of the whole end-to-end benefits package. I think there's been a lot of upward movement in that within procurement at all levels, and we've had to be really mindful of that.
And bonuses can be tied to anything from savings to. I'm just curious of getting to the core of kind of what those incentivizations can look like.
I mean, typically, and obviously every organisation will vary, but in most of my experiences over the last 10 years with any organisation that offers that level of incentivisation in terms of a bonus payment, it's normally fairly split between the organisation needing to achieve its own fiscal objectives for the year, and then obviously the balance of that being the objectives that the individuals have to deliver. And that could be, as you said, completely varied. That could be delivering financial performance, or it could be a range of other objectives as well.
Very cool. But so if we leave then the monetary aspects, the package aspects, right? What are some of the other challenges to attracting new talent?
Yeah, so that and I mentioned that as an important factor, but it's one slice of the cake, because I think what we're seeing more so than ever is individuals want to work on varied projects. People want to have, and we're rolling out now a balanced scorecard in terms of how we look at what procurement delivers within Equans, not only fiscal, but also some of the other added value elements, because I think there's particularly some of the younger members of the team that we're attracting from university or into the apprentice routes, being able to work on the ESG agenda, being able to work for a business that takes that agenda seriously and has responsibility is hugely important. So being a values driven organisation is really important. And obviously an interview is always a two-way process, and I find we get asked a lot more about our approach and philosophy and vision in that space than you would have done maybe 5-10 years ago. It might have not even come up in the conversation. And I think generally, I think talent is more impatient now than it's ever been. Talent's always been impatient because talented people want to progress within an organisation quickly. I've found that ambition has really become quite intense recently. People want fast-tracked careers. That they want to work for organisations where there's shadow boards. They want to know that what their +2 opportunity is and what time frame that's going to happen for them. And I think we're finding we really need to empower talent now and trust it, give it interesting projects, not stand on its shoulders, and trust it to go and deliver.
Super insights there, and great tips for anyone that's trying to attract new talent. You mentioned there the potential impatience as something that you're seeing as a trend. The also maybe the pushback for values in an organization. Are there any other big trends that you see in talent, either in your organization or outside today, or kind of within the way that teams are being built based upon the talent that you need to attract today?
I think what we're finding as a really important lever for us as an organisation, and it's it is a hook into talent, and it's a retention factor, is we are pushing some of our senior talent onto the highest levels of kind of professional development. So, if I take my senior leadership team, which is a team of probably 6 or 7 people, in the last 2 years, we've had individuals on MBAs, and we've just had another individual starting a PhD, fully funded, and that is a really useful hook. Firstly, it's enabling that individual to pursue a lifelong passion in terms of studying sustainability at the highest level that you actually you can, and making a unique contribution to knowledge. That's directly linked with the organisation, so that's a win for us. But effectively, it's locking that individual in as well through a blend of not only benefits but also investment in their academic ambitions. So we're finding with talent, there's a real hunger there for that type of personal development.
Super tips. Building teams of tomorrow and even today looks a lot different than it did 5 years ago, especially in a post-COVID world. Teams are more decentralized. We're working more remotely, and increasingly so. Has this in any way impacted your guys' talent pool? And then as a second part of that question, how do you ensure that you continue to build culture and team spirit when things are becoming increasingly remote?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey for us, probably over that 18 months, 2 years. I mean, as a team prior to COVID, we were in the office with a huge amount of intensity. So even though we were far and wide over the whole of the UK, London was always quite a hub. I would spend sort of 4 days a week in London as a typical norm. And then, like every other organisation pretty much in the UK, we were flung into remote working, and that really broke that pattern. And whilst initially we thought there would be a big desire for everybody to return back to the office once things returned to a degree of normality, we found that didn't happen to necessarily the extent that we would, and people got really used to the flexibility that working from home brings. There's various different cost benefits for people of working from home as well, and flexibility around childcare. And I think as an organisation, we've been very, very accommodating to that, very mature in that, and embraced it. But now I think we've reached a bit of a balance where we are having the right amount of time together as a team. And I think we've not been really prescriptive about that. But in terms of, for example, monthly senior leadership team meetings, we all find, I think, a huge amount of benefit from being co-located in the office and having that human interaction, and it's all manner of things that go with that. It's corridor conversations with people that you don't have in the corridors of your own house. So I think we're trying to strike the balance, but then it's also about just taking the time to make sure we're really disciplined about the one-to-ones and the career development conversations, and making sure they're diarised and structured. And I think more importantly, it's as a procurement team, we have a very flat structure. So I like to think people feel that they can reach out and have those kind of those unnecessary and necessary conversations whenever they feel appropriate. But constantly, the need to communicate with the team is always there, and I think there's always some level of dissatisfaction in this sort of hybrid work, that we don't talk to each other enough. But it's just trying to keep that constantly on the radar. I think it's an evolving process.
You're a transition master, Jonathan, because my next question is very much on the backside of that. You mentioned that it's easier to be disappointed at certain times by the fact that we don't get to be around each other and have those corridor conversations, maybe as an aspect of it, or the team feeling. How do you keep teams happy? It's the big question for any leader, whether they're in procurement or another business role. But do you have any concrete tips of how you keep your team happy?
What I find with my immediate team, and I think that I'm fortunate at Equans that I've got a very talented senior leadership team around me. Very ambitious group of individuals. And I think what works most effectively for those is continual target setting and understanding, look, what are the 5-6 things I need to deliver over the next 12-month period, 6 to 12-month period, that are going to get me to where I want to be. How am I going to be incentivized for delivering that? And trying to engineer those objectives so it's the right blend of what the individual wants to do and what the business needs. And look, we're a function of finance, so there's always an obvious element of what that's going to look like from a business perspective. But I found that generally a really positive way of developing talent quickly and retaining their interest within the organisation. And then I think there's another element of treating talent slightly differently to perhaps, we're a large team. There's probably 50, 60 people in the team within the UK business. So it's taking the time to talk to talent, have those career development conversations, have the maturity to realise that sometimes they're going to want to pursue opportunities inside and outside of the business. And it's then having that relationship with you where they can talk to you about that before it becomes more of a final conversation. So I think it's just it's an ongoing management process, really.
Availability and the human aspect should never be lost on leading a team. I think that also something that you mentioned that was so great was understanding that there needs to be a mix. There needs to be clear targets set, but a mix between what the business needs and what the individual wants, which I think is so important. It's also making me wonder, do you have any openings in your procurement team? Do you need a new talent? Because I'm ready to apply, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. Always looking for the right people.
All right. Awesome. I would love to segue into a little bit of a lighter part of the episode to round things off, to not just to get to know Dr. Jonathan Sims as the procurement guru that you are, but also as a person. Our quick fire round, as we typically do with our guests. Some easy questions, 1 word, 1 sentence answers. It's not going to be related to anything that we've talked about prior to today. Are you ready?
Let's go for it.
All right, sounds good. Tomorrow, you have a all expenses paid trip. Where are you heading?
Monte Carlo.
Okay, to watch the race, or?
Be good to watch the F1. Nice just to wander around. I love wandering up the ports, looking at super yachts and other things I can't afford. So yes, been to Monaco a couple of times. So yeah, it's a nice spot.
Okay, never been myself. Sounds lovely. If I'm coming to dinner tonight, as you say in Swedish, you're paradrätt. It's a dish that you feel comfortable with making for anyone that's coming that you can be able to impress. What are you making?
Oh, it'd have to be a traditional roast beef Sunday dinner. That's my signature dish.
A nice Sunday roast. I would expect nothing less from you either then. All right. 1 book or podcast that you could recommend to our listeners out there, something that you've read prior or listened to prior or is currently on your bedside table.
Yeah, it was a book that I bought the team for Christmas. I'm not sure whether they fully appreciated it or not, whether they'd have preferred a bottle of champagne, but it was called Turn the Ship Around.
Turn the Ship Around.
Basically, it's quite a famous US admiral that did a major transformation in terms of one of the poorest performing ships and companies in the US fleet into one of the highest performing. So quite an interesting book.
Very exciting. All right. Fantastic tip. For any of our listeners that are out there that would like to get in touch with you or learn more about what you guys are doing at Equans or any type of insights that you're sharing, Jonathan, how could they be able to get in touch with you?
I mean, LinkedIn is a great forum, so feel free to drop me a note or an invite via LinkedIn. And if there's anything I can do to support, always happy to help.
Fantastic. You've been an awesome guest today. We thank you so much for taking the time to be able to sit in on today's episode. And we hope to be having you back in the future. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thanks, Sam. It's been a pleasure.